Hi, Bell Tower fam. Today we are talking about the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We've heard all about it. We've seen it in the news. Our lobbyists have sent us these 400-page documents with all of the goodies that are involved in this infrastructure bill. So I got a lot of emails. What's in it for us? What can we do? And the way that I'm going to think about it is the same way that I thought about the Rebuild Florida funding that came out 2 years ago. It was the same language involved. This is once in a lifetime opportunity. We will not have this opportunity again to get this funding. A once in a generation time for us to rebuild our infrastructure and become more resilient. Those were the things that we heard 2 years ago with Rebuild Florida. And that led to us being able to draw down over $35 million in funding by implementing the steps that I'm going to share with you right now. It goes back to what my daddy always said, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. What we want to do is think of projects in two pots. The first pot will be our smaller localized projects. Those projects that are shovel ready are preferred, of course. Your roadway projects, your water projects, your broadband projects, EV projects, all of those projects that fall within the priorities of the infrastructure bill. You want to look at those projects that you have. You want to see which projects are shovel ready and which projects do you have that we can start planning and gathering the data that we need to be able to submit a strong proposal. These smaller projects, I believe that these projects will be a good fit for going for funding to the state agencies. Now, why am I saying go to the state agencies? On Friday of last week, when we're filming this, today is February 15th that I'm filming this. Friday of last week, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson came down and she delivered two huge checks. She delivered $18.6 billion to the state of Florida. She also delivered $1.2 billion to Miami-Dade County. And this is where the eligibility comes in. When the federal government decides to say, we're going to release all of this funding, they're usually looking at the high level funding source. We heard the term formula grant. This is the evidence of that formula grant. The federal government came up with their formula. They created their calculations and they decided that the state of Florida will get $18.6 billion. And the eligibility also said that local governments can get funding. And I know you're a local government too. In this instance, that local government was stopping at the county level. We saw this with the CARES program where the mayors had to go and advocate for their projects to get funding. So the county got $1.2 billion out of that $18.6 billion to implement their infrastructure programs. The state will now be required to disperse that money to the smaller municipalities. You will start to see the Florida Department of Transportation, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the Department of Economic Opportunity start to release funding grant opportunities for us to submit these projects to them, these smaller projects that we want to submit. Hopefully they'll come out and say they want to do a big one, but we'll see. We'll want the money to go as far as it can. And the way that this might look is two ways. One will be they'll come up with a completely new funding opportunity. This is a whole new RFP. Another way is they will go through their original funding sources. For example, right now we're applying to FDOT, the Florida Department of Transportation, for TAP grants in Miami-Dade County. So in the past, they might have gotten 23 applications that they received. And from those 23, they were able to fund 20% of those applications. But now if they're getting more money through the infrastructure program, they might be able to fund 50% of those applications as opposed to only 20% of those applications. So they will either go through the existing funding streams that they have and just award more funding, or they'll create completely new funding pots. What you want to do now is to start to, or what we're going to be doing, you don't have to do this part, we are going to be watching the state agencies like a hawk to see when that funding is coming down, how much money they're going to be putting into those pots. And what we want you to do is make sure that you start to identify those projects now. We don't want to wait until the RFP is released and then start brainstorming projects to apply for. There won't be a lot of time to prepare these applications, and we want very good applications that we submit. So get your projects together now. Start thinking about the projects: transportation, EV, stormwater, broadband connectivity, those types of projects right now. You also want to look at how those projects affect your low to moderate income communities, how they affect your working class, if there will be a negative effect on the environment, if there will be a negative effect on the on historical properties in your area. All of those federal regulations, you want to start looking at that project from every single angle. And we want facts and data. The more facts and data that you have, the better. We don't want just a general, this project will improve safety. How, why does this project need to have safety improved versus this project over in this community? How many accidents have you had? What happens if you don't implement this new skill or this new strategy that you're going to put? Start really backing up our statements with data for this project. Now, we've talked about our smaller projects. Now let's talk about our large projects. If you have a very large project that you want to provide, especially if you have a project that will have a regional impact or a multi-jurisdictional impact, we want to start to prepare that. You will potentially be able to submit that application directly to the federal government if the project is large enough. We see right now the RAISE grant is out. Let's put that into perspective. The RAISE grant is asking for a project that is no less than $5 million, even if you're only asking for planning money. Now, how large must that project be if even the planning grant has to be $5 million, right? Think big ticket items. These are our $10 million, $14 million, $15 million projects that we're talking about for our RAISE program. In the past, RAISE has funded maybe, in Florida at least, one or two of the metropolitan areas. You might see Miami-Dade County get a large RAISE grant. You might see Tampa area get a large RAISE grant. And then you might see a rural community get a large RAISE grant. This time around, we still expect it to be around that same standard where you have your large organizations, your large municipal areas or your large county areas getting these grants, and then a rural area, but you might have maybe 4 of them getting it as opposed to only 2 getting it, so that they can start to spread. Remember that RAISE grant is $7.5 billion that they have available right now. So we do expect to see more, but $7.5 billion, especially when you're asking for the projects to be at least $5 million, might not go a long way. But if you do have a project, I do look forward to hearing from you about it. A third thing that you can do is you can start to reach out to your state agencies and reach out to the county. If you have a roadway in your community that is owned by the state or owned by the county, begin to reach out to them and tell them, make some noise. Hey, the bridge in our area, it needs some repair. Can we make sure that it gets on the list when you start planning out which bridges are going to get repaired? Begin to advocate for your community. The funding doesn't necessarily have to come to you, but if you can get it through a joint participation agreement, get it done that way, or just by getting your project pulled into the work plan of that state agency or that county agency, it's still a win-win. It's a win for you because you might not have to do as much administration, and it's a win for our residents, which is the most important part of all of this that we're doing, right? So to sum it up, what are we going to do? We are going to, 1, look at the projects that we have. What projects do we have that are shovel ready in the areas of transportation, broadband, resiliency, cleanup, brownfield cleanup, things like that. We're also going to look at our projects that are not quite shovel ready, but we can do enough planning and get enough data to support that project. Those projects don't have to be very large projects. They can be your localized projects. And those projects, we are going to look to the state agencies to submit those applications. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to look to see maybe we do have a very large project. I love those very large projects. You know that I do. We might have a large project that has a regional impact or a nationwide impact, and we're going to begin to build relationships with those stakeholders. We're going to begin to advocate and pull the data that we need, because we have to back that up with data. We can't just give flowery language. We have to give data and statistics for this. So we're going to pull that information out as well, so that if we have a project that meets one of those federal grants, those federal competitive grants, we're ready to go after that. And the third thing we're going to do is identify opportunities for partnership. Reach out to the state agencies, reach out to those county governments and tell them, if you are planning projects, if you are preparing to identify the roadways that need to be improved, or the resiliency projects that need to be improved, or the areas that need EV stations, please consider our community when you're thinking about that, because of A, B, and C. Again, data is very important. Do you have roadways that are closed? Do you have a bridge in your area that's constantly malfunctioning? Do you have reports where you have infrastructure that is going down and it is not necessarily owned by you, it's owned by the county or the state, and you have the data that back that up, where there's constantly repairs or closures in that area? Use that data to build your case to go to these state agencies and these county agencies to advocate for your community. And with that, I hope that you enjoy our newsletter for this month, and I look forward to hearing from you as we begin to go after this bipartisan infrastructure funding. Have a great day.